Welcome back to C's TV with your host, C's. It's been a while again, yes. I'm off of uni, I'm on my break, so I thought I'd give you guys another book review. And today we'll be reviewing 1984 by George Orwell. First fiction book we're doing. Not bad, eh? Not bad at all. Yeah, I had a lot of fun reading this one, and yeah, let's talk about it. Let's go straight in. Alright, so let's talk about the author, George Orwell. First things first, his name's actually not even George Orwell. His name is Eric Blair. His pen name is George Orwell. He was born in 1903 and died in 1950. Yeah, so young life. He was ill with tuberculosis, and later on in his career, it started to get worse, it became more severe. And he actually said that he would have written this book a bit better if it wasn't for suffering from TB. So it's quite sad to think. I mean, a lot of people consider this book to be a masterpiece, one of the best fiction books ever released. It's interesting to imagine what this book would have been like if he hadn't been ill. This book was published in 1949, so 4 years after the Second World War, and you definitely see that in the book. You know, there's a lot of references to war. It's a society in a state of war, or a continuing war as well. More on that later. He was an author, obviously. He was a journalist, and he was like a social critic. He was an advocate for socialism, social democracy as well. Especially witnessing what was going on across the world during World War II. Like Russia, Germany, the rise of fascism, communism, all that sort of stuff. But it's really important to understand that because, he makes links to that in this book. He definitely references it, and he definitely gets his inspiration from these states to then create this fictional world, which is Oceania, this dystopian London. Ooh, interesting. There's also no videos of him. There's no videos of him. You can find pictures of the guy. Also, he wrote a bunch of essays, which BBC did a documentary on. That documentary was quite interesting. Also quite boring, but interesting and boring at the same time. I don't know. It's one of those ones. It's set in 1984 London. England. Well, it's not called England. It's called Airstrip 1. And England, or the UK, is not the UK. It's called Oceania, and it's comprised of other countries as well. More on that in a bit. And it follows Winston Smith, and Winston Smith is a worker for the government, and the government is called INGSOC, so INGSOC, INSOC, or the party. There is referred to as a party in the book, so I'm referred to it as a party. He works at the party at the Ministry of Truth, and his role is to rewrite newspaper articles, specifically from the Times, and his department works on books, on anything literature, so documents, records, and essentially they rewrite old newspaper headlines and old newspapers to then fit the actual current events of today, so to match the predictions of the party and what goes on. So they'll rewrite that. So that's quite interesting. More on that in a bit. And then he has these thoughts about about Big Brother, which is this symbol of the party, of this man with a moustache, and his posters are everywhere, and apparently he's watching you. So Big Brother's watching you. That's like what the slogan is. And he has thoughts about Big Brother and the party and basically society and how he hates it. He has these thoughts. He starts writing to a diary, but you see, these thoughts and his hate towards Big Brother can get him into serious trouble because, anyone who's against Big Brother or the party is persecuted and it's hunted down by the thought police. Yeah, thought police. That's what they're called. They're the people that, hunt down deviants. Let's call them deviants. They're not correct. So that's him. So he knows what he's doing. Writing his diary is dangerous. Also because there's a TV, which is called a telescreen, which monitors basically everyone inside their homes. You're constantly being watched, not just outside, inside. And it also shows you, content like news bulletins, war announcements, propaganda. It shows you stuff. And he finds love in this novel with a lady called Julia from work. But even this is dangerous because he mentions that he was married at one point. He's no longer with this woman, but adultery and affair and promiscuity, that is frowned upon. That is seen as against the values of the party. And then there is just one person at work. His name is O'Brien, and he suspects that O'Brien is also against the party, but he doesn't know yet. But then he eventually approaches O'Brien, and he finds out he is, and he tells him about the Brotherhood. And the Brotherhood is a rebel group that are against everything that the party stands for. Like this is the party's slogans. It's freedom is slavery, war is peace, and ignorance is strength. And Winston's against this, and so is the Brotherhood. So he joins the Brotherhood with Julia, and O'Brien's like, yeah, join the Brotherhood. Here's the book. It's called The Book, which essentially runs down through all the ideologies, all the teachings, all the theories of the Brotherhood, and he wants to bring down Big Brother. Even if he's a small part of it, he wants to bring it down. But it turns out it's cap. O'Brien is actually part of the thought police. You see, they're everywhere, man. Big Brother's watching you. He tells him, look, I've been onto you for 7 years now. We have the Brotherhood. We've made it up. We don't know if it's made up though. It could be fake, could be real, the Brotherhood. But he said we make it up so that we catch people that are against the party to, you know, bring them into prison and convert them back to normality, convert them back to being sane and loving the party. That's what ends up happening. He ends up being tortured by O'Brien, ends up being questioned. You know, he tries to fight against it, but then he ends up telling him everything. He admits the crimes that he hasn't done either. He has it rough. So he gets tortured, Julia gets tortured. And then by the end of the book, he ends up loving the party. So he ends up being converted even though he told himself he wouldn't. In the beginning, Winston talks about, you know, how life is, how gloomy it is, how dead it is, essentially, and how he hates Big Brother. When he's at home, he opens up his diary and he actually starts writing, or trying to write anything, and he ends up writing how much he hates Big Brother. In the book it says, his pen had slid voluptuously over the smooth paper, printing in large, neat capitals, down with Big Brother, down with Big Brother. So from the get-go, you already have the idea that will Winston come out of this alive? Because he already mentions how, like, people are hunted out by the thought police. If you're against Big Brother, you essentially get killed, but not only you get killed, you get removed from existence, essentially. Like, you never existed, you were never a thing. So not only did you die, but you were never even born. That's how, like, bad it is. And that just shows the lengths that the party will go through to stop those with thoughts against them and stop those that are against them. He has thoughts of hatred towards Big Brother, but also he tries to connect with, like, memories that he has in the past, and he can't seem to put two and two together. Like, he always getting the dates muddled up. Like, he doesn't even know himself if the year is 1984 when he's writing it. Like, he writes in his diary, but he doesn't even know.
April the 4th, 1984. I think.
But that's because Big Brother have, you know, they've kind of indoctrinated everyone through, like, propaganda, through the telescreens. We're at war with this person, the year is this, you know, the site is like this. So he doesn't remember the past and what it was like before the party. There's a mention of this revolution, but, you know, prior to that, he doesn't really know. He has some memories which he doesn't know himself. He actually says he felt as though he were wandering in the forests of the sea bottom, lost in a monstrous world where he himself was the monster. He was alone, the past was dead, the future was unimaginable. What certainty had he that a single human creature now living was on his side? He has these feelings against the party and he feels alone. He's like, am I the only one who feels this way? Everything is labeled victory. For some reason, like, everything's victory. Like, he lives in victory mansions, which are like these flats. And the cigarettes are victory. The gin he drinks is victory. And this is quite ironic that everything is labeled victory, because the actual quality of the product, or like what the, like his flats, victory mansions, is the opposite of victory. He doesn't describe his flats as being particularly bad, but not particularly good. His cigarettes, he says that the tobacco isn't too good and stuff like that. So victory cigarettes, essentially a shitty cigarette. And then victory gin, he describes the gin as said it gave off a sickly, oily smell. So yeah, it's ironic that they call it victory, but they're not in victory. They live it like in a desolate state. But it's just another way that the party make everything seem better than it is. It's like a mask, everything. It's like a mask, essentially. Victory this, victory that. But, you know, it's not the case. Also in this society in 1984, most of the countries have become super states. There's only basically 3 countries. So Eurasia, East Asia and Oceania, which is where Winston's at. So victory links to that whole war sense of, you know, victory, fighting in the war. And there's also like a constant reminder that to everyone that you live in a state that's in war. So that psychologically gets to everyone. I guess telling everyone, like, look, this is what you have, yeah, because we're at war. So yeah, so enjoy the victory cigarettes, enjoy victory gin, enjoy everything victory. Winston's always drinking gin. I see it as another way that the party controls people by not having them in a sober state. Instead, you know, have them drinking, have them seem like everything's all okay, everything's good, you know, society's amazing, London's amazing. But that's not the case. So they use gin as like another way to essentially control people. And it actually says he took down from the shelf a bottle of colourless liquid with a plain white label marked Victory Gin. It gave off a sickly, oily smell as of Chinese rice spirit. The next moment, however, the burning in his belly died down and the world began to look more cheerful. Like I said, he drinks a gin to just get through the day or get through life because it's not so enjoyable. Another interesting thing about the book is that they have a new language. It's called Newspeak. So they have the English language, but it's shortened, which is like really strange. But there's a reason for it, very sinister reason for it, of course. And every year, Newspeak, the language, so the words that it's made out of, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So say we have like 100 words, next year it'll be like 90 words, 80 words, so essentially a couple of words. They do this so that people have fewer and fewer words to convey their thoughts and ideas. So if I have fewer words, I can't really express how I feel, and they think that if people have fewer words, there's a less of a chance of them having thoughts against a party, thinking too deeply. They don't want to promote profound thought. They want you to be just like yes and no, and that's it. And that's just another way of controlling. Do it through language, There's still people I know like normal, like Winston. He's from kind of an older generation, so he knows old speak or the normal English. But in his work, he'll be writing a Newspeak. But then slowly, like the next generation, the generation after that, will only know Newspeak and will only know a couple of words essentially. It says here, "Don't you see the whole aim of Newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words in which to express it. Every concept that can ever be needed will be expressed by exactly one word, with its meaning rigidly defined and all its subsidiary meanings rubbed out and forgotten." So like I said, they want to limit the amount of thoughts you have in your head by essentially getting rid of language. And thought crime is what the party calls ideas against the state, so any bad thoughts, and by bad is anything against the party essentially. So like what Winston's saying, like he hates Big Brother, and those thoughts he has in his head, those are really dangerous. That can get him killed, and that's called thought crime. And if you're suspected of having thought crime or actually doing things against the party, you'll be killed. As I mentioned earlier, Big Brother is everywhere. It's watching you. They have the telescreen, which is like a TV and also like a CCTV camera. It shows you news bulletins, war news, and fitness classes. I don't know, they have like a workout thing. Just the content which the party wants to show you, but it also monitors you. So you're being watched from your home. They show the Big Brothers watching you. They also have posters everywhere around the streets. And in the book it says he took a 25-cent piece out of his pocket. There too, in the tiny lettering, the same slogans are inscribed. And on the other side of the coin, the head of Big Brother. Even from the coin, the eyes pursued you. On coins, on stamps, on the covers of books, on banners, on posters, and on the wrappings of a cigarette packet, everywhere. So that line really just highlights how much surveillance and how much control that the party are in. When you are doing something, or you're going to potentially do something, you have to consider, is this against the party? I'm being watched, so do I want to go through with this? And that's just scary. It's just scary. Which like the whole vibe of this book really, it's just scary. So as I mentioned before, there is a thought police, and the thought police hunt people down and kill people that are against the party essentially. And you don't know who's in the thought police. That's the scariest part. You don't know if my neighbor is, if my friend is, if my mum is, if my work colleague is. You don't know who's watching you. So not only is the government through propaganda saying, Big Brother's watching you through the adverts, through the books, through the posters, but also through your closest friends. You don't know if they're watching you and if at any moment they can turn on you. And in the book it says, more commonly, people who had incurred the displeasure of the party simply disappeared and were never heard of again. One never had the smallest clue as to what had happened to them. In some cases, they might not even be dead. So the party, they don't hesitate to make examples of people. If you're one day found out of having certain thoughts or doing certain things, that's it. You're eliminated essentially, which is fucking scary, bro. Another thing in particular that stood out to me was how Winston's work involves changing newspaper headlines and rewriting articles. So the party, they would do speeches and announcements, and they would say the ration for chocolates has increased. So they obviously they do rations, and they have rations in place because they're in war. I mean, they are at war, but it's like a never-ending war, which they've done on purpose, just so that the people in London don't complain about how much food they're getting, how much chocolate, how much gin, how much coffee. They'll make predictions like, by this time we'll have an increase of rations, this amount of people, we're fighting this group, we're fighting East Asia, we're fighting Eurasia. And Winston would change that. So he essentially changes the past, changes history, which then leads to like this bigger idea of that the party essentially control history, and they control what people know, which is absolutely scary. It actually says here, the subsidiary reason is that the party member, like the proletarian, tolerates present-day conditions, partly because he has no standards of comparison. He must be cut off from the past, just as he must be cut off from foreign countries, because it is necessary for him to believe that he's better off than his ancestors. So that quote just sums up the reason as to why the party does it. It's so dark, it's so fucking sinister. So not only so they don't that they think that, you know, things are okay because the party has made these predictions and they've lived to them. Also, they don't compare how things were before. They essentially just live in a present, like a continuous present of things just happening and things going as they should go. But they don't ever stop to think that, oh, back in the day it was like this, like why is it like this now? Because there's no back in the day. They just keep changing the past, they keep rewriting it, and they destroy the evidence of the actual events. They'll be like, okay, this has happened, we'll get rid of that, we'll write it as this and then release it. And in that quote it mentions that's why we cut off people from foreign countries. And that's another thing, you know, people from Oceania, people from London, they don't leave, and foreigners from East Asia, Eurasia don't come in. So they don't know what the people's lives are like. That's another way to then control the people, so they don't compare. They don't see, oh, my life's better than people in East Asia, or my life is worse. So you just kind of go day to day, you know, maybe a bit like, you know, what they don't, you know, they don't think about these things. They just think this is how life is meant to be and everything's okay because the party says it's okay. So as the last quote mentioned, it mentioned the word proletariat, which essentially means the working class. So I want to get more into classes. There's the proletariat, but they're shortened to the pros in this book, the pros. George Orwell calls it the pros. There's the outer party, which is like the middle class, we can assume, and then the inner party, which is the upper class. Even though the party and the inner party and, you know, select people run London, there is a class system. And it's interesting though, because from reading it, the proletariat, they're the ones that are actually the most free. The reason that is because they don't care about them. The party, the outer party, inner party, they treat them as not human and like not as animals. So they'll be like, oh, you know, the proletariat, they don't have to wear the uniforms. So the outer party members, they wear all blue overalls. So uniform, that's another way they control people. And the inner party members, they wear black overalls. So there's that distinction. But the proletariat, no one cares what they wear. I don't think they even have telescreens in their homes. They don't really care about what music they listen to, what food and drink they consume. In the book it says that the great majority of pros do not even have telescreens in their homes. Even the civil police interfered with them very little. There was a vast amount of criminality in London, a whole world within a world of thieves, bandits, prostitutes, drug peddlers, and racketeers of every description. But since it all happened among the pros themselves, it was of no importance. This is important because George Orwell, he was very much interested in the plight of the working class and the livelihoods of the working class, especially during World War II and the 40s. So even before 1984 and before Animal Farm, he wrote a non-fiction book or essay, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's called The Road to Wigan Pier, and that talks about the working class people and the lives of people in the north of England. And he was there firsthand witnessing how these people lived. You know, he was very much interested in their lives and how they were neglected in a sense. So he clearly shows that in this book through the pros and how they're treated as second-hand citizens. They are, and they're forgotten about. They're just there. That's what they described us. So like all the values of the party apply to all party members and people apart from animals and the proletariat. So that, like the fact that the animals are in the same category as the proletariat, essentially saying that these humans are like animals and they're not any better than the rest of them, which is like, you know, crazy. Winston's colleague, Brian, he thought, oh, this guy, he has the same ideas of me against Big Brother, you know, I should reach out to him, find as much help as I can. And when he does that, you know, Brian tells him like, yeah, you know, I'm part of actually the Brotherhood. So he's like, oh right, the Brotherhood, I've heard about it, but I don't know if it's real, fake, whatever. He's like, yeah, it's real. It's all cap. He's a liar. He's actually part of the Thought Police, and he gets him, he tortures him. He's like, yeah, I've been watching you for 7 years. Like, we know, the party knows. And it's just like, the moment when he does get caught, it's like the scariest thing ever. Because he's just chilling with Julia in the secret hideout they have. The next thing you know, behind the portrait, there's like a TV. And they didn't even clock the TV in the room. They thought they were in a secret room. Telescreen's like, you know, Winston, Julia, like put your arms behind your back, whatever. And then people just storm in the room. But so Brian gets Julia and Winston, and he tortures Winston. He reveals to Winston, he's like, look, we don't just torture people and kill them. We'll torture you, we'll help you, and then we'll make you love Big Brother. And then we'll kill you. You know, it says here that Winston cannot remember whether it was in drug sleep or in a normal sleep, or even in a moment of wakefulness, a voice murmured in his ear, "Don't worry, Winston, you're in my keeping. For 7 years I have watched over you. Now the turning point has come. I shall save you. I shall make you perfect." You see, so the party, like, they think that, you know, when they catch people that are against the party, they're doing a good job, you know. They're helping people out. They're rehabilitating them, essentially. But it's just like indoctrination. And it's just sad. It's so sad, bro. Free up Winston, man. And then it goes on to say that, or Brian goes on to say, "We do not destroy the heretic because he resists us. So long as he resists us, we never destroy him. We convert him. We capture his inner mind. We reshape him. We burn all evil and all illusion out of him. We bring him over to our side, not in appearance, but in genuinely heart and soul. We make him one of ourselves before we kill him." They think they're doing a good deed here. They think that, yes, we're saving someone. We're getting rid of his evil. They don't think they're the evil. We're reshaping him. We're converting him. We're making him perfect. It's all crazy. But this is what happens to Winston. And it's in this torture, and it's when he's in O'Brien's hands where O'Brien actually tells them more about the party, and he tells them what their mission is and what their goal is. And their goal is essentially power. That's what they care about, power. They don't care about anything else. They don't care about money. They don't care about pleasing people. They don't care about love. They just care about power. And it says here, "He had a sensation of stepping into the dampness of a grave, and it was not much better because he had always known that the grave was there and waiting for him." So Winston, early on in the book, he says, there's a couple of quotes that reference that, you know, he feels like he's gonna die. He feels like what he's doing is gonna lead him to death. And to emphasize the amount of control the party has, which is that Winston and probably other people subconsciously, they're always thinking like, I could die if I do this, or I could die if I think this thought, which just goes to highlight the power of the party over man. Then here it says, "But by far the more important reason for the readjustment of the past is the need to safeguard the infallibility of the party. It is not merely that speeches, statistics, and records of every kind must be constantly brought up to date in order to show that the predictions of the party were in all cases right. It is also that no change in doctrine or in political alignment can ever be admitted, for to change one's mind or even one's policy is a confession of weakness." So to break that down, O'Brien is essentially saying that not only do we change past events to match up what we're saying now so that there's coherence, we also do it so that we're always right. And the fact that we're always right shows that we're not weak, that we're actually in fact powerful, so you have to listen to us. And that's also, there's no change in heart. So if nothing's changing and we say this, that's all there is to, that is all there is to believe. So it's just so sinister, you know, and it just links back to the whole idea of the party's ultimate goal, which is power over man. It says here, "Power is power over human beings, over the body, but above all over the mind. Power over matter, external reality as you would call it, is not important. Already our control over matter is absolute." Yeah, this just further highlights, you know, how much obsession they have over power, and they do that with Winston. Before they had control of his body, they had tortured him, they had him in his hands, but they didn't get through to the mind. And when they do, that's when you're defeated, and that's when Winston's defeated. When Winston lost, and you're felt as a reader like, damn, you know, he's been defeated. You're left with like a feeling of sadness and disappointment because you wanted him to win, but how could he win against a party, this government that's so powerful and control all aspects of life, even your mind? They actually talk about how scientists they're working on trying to control or to listen to people's thoughts and, you know, hear what they're saying to prevent even thought crime in the book. But, you know, even without being able to listen to your thoughts, they have already planted those seeds of doubt, you know, like, this is wrong, this, we should be doing this, that, you know, you have to second guess. And that ends up happening to Winston, you know, they break him, not only physically, but mentally. Another quote that emphasizes the party's goal for power and for absolute power is here, where it says, "Progress in our world will be progress towards more pain. The old civilizations claimed that they were founded on love or justice. Ours is founded upon hatred. We have cut the links between child and parent, and between man, and between man and woman. No one dares trust a wife or a child, or a friend any longer. There will be no loyalty except loyalty towards the party. There will be no love except the love of Big Brother." That quote just sums up the novel, essentially, or the party at least, as a whole. They only want people to love the party, and that's it. They just want loyalty towards the party. They want complete submission from people. They don't care if you love your parent or neighbor or whatever. In the book, it actually shows examples of children ratting out their parents, snitching on their parents to the thought police, which goes to show how much the party, how much influence they have over families, over individuals. You would think that people, they're most loyal to their blood, their family, but that's not the case here. The party has made it so that people are only loyal to them, and that's it. And Orwell does this to actually reference how things were done during Stalinism and Joseph Stalin's reign over the Soviet Union from the early 20s to early 50s. There was actually like propaganda from the Soviet Union of this kid, I forgot his name, but there was this kid who was essentially, he snaked his dad to the state for stealing like crops or something, and the story of this kid is like pushed around as like a cautionary tale. If you ever see something bad, tell the police, and not just kids, but like parents, so they'll have this in the back of their mind. Even my family I can't trust because they might snake me. So these are things actually happening, but Orwell talks about in this book. And a lot of the ideas of this book are yeah, they are a satire of communism and of Stalinism, because things like propaganda, like Joseph Stalin was like the master of that, arguably. In schools, he would have books that are about him and about communism and about his teachings. He would spread propaganda, war propaganda, saying that everything's going well, the country's prospering, but not really revealing to like the outside world what the actual case was. There was a lot of famine in the Soviet Union during that time as well. And Big Brother itself is said to be kind of linked to Stalin because it's just the way they look. Stalin had this big moustache and dark eyes, and that's like how Big Brother's described. There's definitely links there to communism. And you could say that the closest thing to 1984 was that society of the Soviet Union during the 20s to 50s and during Stalinism and Stalin's reign. I mentioned their names as the Ministry of Truth, Ministry of Peace, Ministry of Love, Ministry of Plenty, but it's like ironic because they're the exact opposite. So the Ministry of Love tortures people, the Ministry of Truth spreads lies, the Ministry of Peace basically promotes war and hatred. Like they have this 2-minute hate week or whatever, 2 minutes of hate every day, where they'll show like video of the Brotherhood and this Goldstein, which is this like Jewish guy who's essentially against the party, against everything, and then they'll like berate him and they'll put this on a big screen and people start shouting, so they promote hate. And then Ministry of Plenty, which deals with food and rations, but actually starving people. At one point, when Winston visits O'Brien, he realizes that like he has wine, he has like nice cigarettes, he has all this. So people in the inner party have these things, but then the outer party members and the proletariat don't have the food and the drinks. So it's just all lies. So society built on lies and built on facade and just this idea that everything's okay, but it's not. One big aspect of the book is this idea called doublethink. Doublethink is the ability to believe that black is white. Doublethink is the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them. So doublethink is this idea the party has where black is actually white, and you can say that white is actually black. But the fact is black and white is white. But you can have these two ideas simultaneously and accept one and reject the other, even if the one you're rejecting is the truth. If that makes sense. To further explain this, there's one quote quite early on in the book where Winston says, "Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 makes 4. If that is granted, all else follows." So after he's tortured, Winston ends up believing that 2 + 2 = 5. O'Brien holds up 4 fingers and he's like, "How many fingers am I holding?" And Winston says 4. He's like, no, how many fingers am I holding? He's like, 5, there's 5. And then he actually ends up believing it. The whole reason the party do this is to make you think about things and accept the lie, accept the truth that the party want you to believe. You can have two, there's only one truth, but you're debating an alternative. So now there's 2 truths and you accept the lie, and it's just like crazy, like what? And this is what happens. And this is what happens to Winston. He ends up accepting that truth in the end. He's like, oh, I can't believe like this whole time I was thinking 2 + 2 = 4 when it equals 5. And the fact that he's accepted that means that he's not free anymore. And at the party, it got to him. Oh man. George Orwell was an advocate for what he called English socialism. Essentially socialism, equality amongst people, equal distribution of wealth and resources, everything that the party is not standing for. And this was because there was a rise of communism and the rise of the Soviet Union. This book is very much centered around depicting, or at least criticizing, communism to an extent, but also gave way to this idea of Big Brother and mass surveillance and the constant monitoring of people and what we do. Especially today, where in society, with the growth of technology and the rise of media and social media, mass media, communication, television, surveillance, it's all grown exponentially, especially since writing this. You know, he was writing this during World War II, so that aspect is literally, look, I'm literally across my street, I can see a sign that says CCTV. You see, I'm being watched. Oh, I actually found an interesting statistic. There's one CCTV camera for every 13 people in the UK, and on average you're caught around 300 times a day. So when you leave your house, I think after seeing that statistic, it's gonna be a bit weird leaving my house like, oh yeah, I've been watched today like 300 times, potentially 300 times. So you know, George Orwell wasn't too far off with his prediction in a sense. I mean, at least in terms of mass surveillance and the rise of communism. Like, there was a rise of communism, yeah, definitely. You know, after World War II, what happened in the Soviet Union started to get, you know, it gave way to China and Mao's dynasty and the rise of communism in China. And this is a fiction novel, so take it with a grain of salt. But it was definitely scary, and it was certainly a good read. Yeah, this book is probably one of the best fiction books I've read. I'm trying to think what was the last fiction book I read. I did read Animal Farm not too long ago, which is also by George Orwell, which is his first book, and that one was really interesting. But it more talks about class divisions between man. But that one, you know, I'm gonna have to read Animal Farm again, maybe do a review on it. But yeah, I think that's it for this book review. As I said before, our first fiction book, the first of many, of course. If you haven't, don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe. Anything I've missed about the book, anything you find interesting, if you've read it, let me know your thoughts on it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the next one. Bye bye.